Today's episode is brought to you by Health IQ. Health IQ uses science and data to secure lower rates on life insurance for health-conscious people. So if you're a runner, a cyclist, a strength trainer, or an OCR athlete, like you probably are since you're listening to this podcast, and you don't have life insurance, I would hit up Health IQ because they offer discounts for being healthy. What you need to do is you need to head over to their website, healthiq.com/SASP for Strength and Speed Podcast. Once you get over to their website, you're going to have to take a Health IQ quiz, and that's going to see if you qualify for lower rates on your life insurance. Plus, you can get additional savings by submitting actual data, so things like race results, Strava, Runkeeper, or any other application that you use to actually track your fitness. 56% of Health IQ customers save between 4 and 33% on their life insurance. So if you're with another life insurance agency and you're not taking advantage of all the fitness work you're putting in on your spare time, then you need to switch companies right now. Car insurance companies give you lower rates for being a good driver. There's no reason that health insurance companies shouldn't give you a lower rate for being a healthier person by doing things like training, running, lifting weights, and participating in our favorite sport, OCR. You don't have to be an elite athlete to qualify. You just have to be the type of person who's putting in a little bit of time and effort to make yourself healthier. And if you're listening to this podcast, chances are that's you. So head on over to healthiq.com/SASP and see if you qualify for lower rates today. This is your host, Evan Preparis. You'll have to excuse the first couple minutes of audio on this podcast. My voice does not sound as clear as usual. Comes out a little echoey, but I can assure you it clears up a couple minutes in. So just stay with us. Great episode with Derek Jacobs. Stay tuned. Welcome back to the Strength and Speed Podcast. I'm your host, Strength and Speed owner, Evan Preparis. I do have a special guest joining me today, which I'm very excited about. Not the usual type of athlete we bring on to the podcast. One of the things we like to do on Strength and Speed, if you're just joining us for the first time, is pull in athletes from other sports and try to learn some lessons learned and see how they can be applied to OCR to make ourselves better at OCR athletes. Well, today on the podcast, we have someone who is a competitive eater and an OCR athlete. So we have Derek Jacobs on the podcast. I'm going to read through a little bit of his bio, and then we'll get started. So Derek started competitive eating almost 3 years ago, doing restaurant challenges, and has beaten 84 of those so far. You can find information on which ones he's beaten on foodchallenges.com profile, which I'm assuming is like Athlinks, but for competitive eating. Then he also signed with Major League Eating last year and completed in 6 contests with them, placing in the money. So I would classify him as a professional eater. He's ranked 21 in the world for competitive eating. First OCR in 2014. First trifecta was last year. And done a couple other ones over the years. Also practices jiu-jitsu, judo, hapkido 5 days a week. So Derek, welcome to the show.
Hey, good to be here.
So first, yeah. So first of all, I'll tell you how I found you. I was watching Nathan's Hot Dog Eating Championship, which I watch every year. Like it's a 4th of July ritual, and I'm watching it, and this dude walks on the screen, and they have the little blurbs underneath him, and it's like Derek Jacobs, obstacle course racer, and I was like, what? There's an obstacle course racer,
You caught the 10 seconds I was on the screen, I think, in that whole hour. But it was good to have the little blurb there.
Still, I mean, so I was super excited because most people don't even know that term, right? Like most people will say, I'm a Spartan racer, and
right.
So I was excited to see the word obstacle course racer on TV. I was excited to see you there, even though, like you said, I don't think we saw you again for the rest of the contest.
Yeah.
And then randomly I'm scrolling through my Instagram feed, and I forgot I was looking for some other post to repost, and I saw your name, the Instagram post I made, and I was like, I should look this dude up. So I looked you up, found you. It turns out you were at Abominable Snow Race, the same race I was at, a couple weeks before me reaching out to you, and didn't know who you were at the time, so I didn't say hi, but I got you eventually. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So before we get started, I think most people are going to want to know, like, some stats on you. So let's go height, weight, and age.
Okay, so I am actually pretty tall. I'm 6'5", about 195 pounds. Today it varies a little bit for me, with the competitive eating and whatnot. But generally, I hover around there, and I am 35.
Okay, so I feel like competitive eating might be a young man's game, but I guess we'll get into that.
We can get into that.
But so your food challenges profile says you've beaten 84 challenges. So give us kind of a rundown of some of the challenges you've beaten and kind of the ones you're most proud of, stuff like that.
So the restaurant challenges, it's been pretty much all types of food. I think anything you can think of, there's generally a restaurant that has a challenge somewhere for that. I travel a little bit for work, and so when I do, I try and use that website to kind of hunt out where I can, local restaurants in that area that I can go and just score a free meal. At this point, I've pretty much exhausted all the challenges within a couple hour radius of my house. So it's one of those things. But I think with some of the bigger ones I've done was 8 pounds of Cincinnati style chili mac, which if you're not from around here, it's got like cinnamon in it. It's like cinnamony chili, so that was a little interesting. I do some team pizza challenges. There are a lot of big giant pizzas that I have a partner that I like to do those with. I've done a few of those. They're usually around 13 pounds, 14 pounds. I did a 72-ounce steak in Amarillo, Texas, that comes with a baked potato, 3 fried shrimp, side salad, and a dinner roll. That's a pretty famous one. I think that was on, back in the Man vs. Food days. 6-pound sundae. Yeah, but my favorite, hands down, I think, restaurant challenge is the breakfast foods, and especially pancakes. I'm a huge fan of pancakes. But
cool. So, I mean, that sounds really impressive. I know I could not do anywhere near any of that stuff. Are there any challenges that have beaten you?
There have been in the since I started. I've redeemed quite a bit of those. Like some of the larger breakfast. Like I said, there was a breakfast challenge that got me the first time, but I've since gone back and gotten it. I think the only 2 outstanding challenges I have right now that I haven't redeemed, and I might never, is a biscuits and gravy. I think it was like 8-some pounds of biscuits and gravy.
It's making me nauseous.
And that's the kind of the thing. It was less the size, I think, on that one, and more just the some of the restaurants are really nice, really like awesome establishments, and some of them are kind of dirty. And that one in particular, I got about halfway through, and I was just kind of like grossed out by the whole place, and the gravy tasted a little off, and I was like, I probably shouldn't eat any of this, let alone 8 pounds of it. So I just was like, I'm gonna call this one and take the loss and live to fight another day.
Right on. So how did this all start? Were you at like a restaurant and there was a challenge and you just found out you had a knack for it, or was this something that you maybe saw Nathan's hot dog eating competition on TV and started specifically training for it?
Yeah, so the restaurant challenges were definitely where I started first before I got into any of the real competitive stuff. And the way that came about was pretty much, I think up to about 30, 31, I was quite a bit larger, around the waist, and then right about then I started trying to eat healthier, lose some weight, be a lot more active, and it's kind of the same story on how I got into the OCR stuff, where I'm just trying to live an overall better fitness type of life and eat healthy. And so I was tracking my macros and stuff like that, and calories wise, and doing a lot of weight training and eating these, kind of getting to some of those where I eat in a window, and I was eating these large meals because I was eating like clean food, like a lot of vegetables, a lot of like white chicken and stuff like that. And so I pretty much try and get in. I'd still be needing a lot of calories, and I try and get these big calorie meals with like healthier foods in kind of all in one sitting after my workout. And I was getting to the point where I was like noticing, I was like, man, I'm really eating a lot of food here. And I saw the website, the Food Challenges website, and the owner of that has a YouTube page. I'll give him a plug. His name's Randy Santel. He has about 500 and plus food challenge wins. He travels all over the country. And I saw you can use that website to kind of find out where there are restaurants in your area have challenges. And there was a diner pretty close to me that had a breakfast sandwich challenge, which was 2 like 9-inch big Belgian waffles, gravy, sauce, like 2 half-pound sausage patties, a bunch of eggs, potatoes, all this stuff. I think it was around 4 pounds or so, and I noticed that, and I was like, I could eat that. It's not a big bowl of broccoli, but it's a cheap meal. Why not? So I went in there, took it on, and did fairly well. I was pretty like, well, I could do that. So then I was like, well, what else do they got around here? And there was a barbecue place in town, and they had a barbecue challenge. So I was like, well, I'll go there. And so I did that one, and then they get a little bit addicting, in a fun way, because that thrill of winning. And I just kept doing them, and it took me a while actually to kind of get my first loss. So I had a good winning streak in there to begin with, and I was like, this is pretty fun. And then, like I said, with traveling with work and all that stuff, I just do one and pick one up here, and I had a chance to meet the owner of that website, and we actually did a team pizza challenge together around for like my 25th win, I think. And it was just kind of continued on. It was a fun little hobby. I didn't take it too seriously for a while, just because I was having, it wasn't too much of a struggle with the restaurant stuff. But then I can talk about the how kind of last year that kind of turned into the competitive way. If you want, I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely.
I tend to ramble a bit, but yeah. So like I said, kind of I was doing the food challenges, and it was fun, but I had kind of exhausted all the ones near me, and I was like, well, let's see, what else can I do? And I looked at some, started looking up some places that had like the competitions, the heads-up competitions. I'm a pretty good eater. I know I can eat a lot at this point. So actually, like the first, I think I did maybe 1 or 2 kind of backyard, small town fair eating contests for a while, or like maybe 2 or 3, and then I signed up on the MLE website to do the Nathan's hot dog eating qualifier. So I'm not sure if everyone knows how the Nathan's contest works. MLE has a bunch of contests throughout the
I'm going to interrupt for a second. For those who don't know, MLE is Major League Eating. Yes, Major League Eating. So keep going. Okay.
So they have Major League Eating is pretty much, I guess I'll give them a little bit of more explanation. They're the kind of the governing body of all, I think they say, intestinal sports or something like that, and so they'll have a bunch of contests kind of starting early spring into late fall, kind of the same time frame as OCR racing, and usually it's just one-off competitions here and there for, depending on the sponsors, different types of food, stuff like that. But their big one, obviously, is the Nathan's Hot Dog Contest on the 4th of July. And the way you get into that contest is by qualifying at one of the events that they have all around the country. So the one that I came across or noticed was in Cincinnati. And I live in Dayton, Ohio. And they had it at the Reds game, after a Reds game one day, and so I was like, I'll sign up for that. I'll go. I worked, and it was on a Friday night, and I worked all that day, and just kind of was like, I'll just show up, and went to the game, and I remember they were playing the Rockies, and they were losing hard, so the game was lasting for a long, long time, and I was starving, and I kind of lucked out, or kind of maybe not really lucked out, but I was ready and had practiced a little bit beforehand and ended up doing fairly well. I got 23 hot dogs in 10 minutes for that event, which was good enough to win that qualifier. So I got to go to New York to go to the Coney, for the Coney Island finals, essentially on 4th of July. So after that, I signed with them. and I've done about 5 other contests last year, which was my rookie season, and it's been pretty good. I did an ice cream eating contest at the Indiana State Fair, moon pies at the Bass Pro Shop in Memphis, bratwursts here in Cincinnati at the Oktoberfests, and shrimp St. Elmo's shrimp cocktail eating contest in Indianapolis as well for the Big Ten tailgate party. So it's a lot of interesting things, and it's just kind of been a wild, wacky ride.
Yeah, so I don't know much beyond Nathan's hot dog eating competition, right? Because that's the one that's televised, and everything else you'd have to go and research. So what kind of prizes or prize money are we talking about here at these events?
So generally, the contests have a prize it's somewhere between $1,500 to $2,500 for first place, and down to usually about 5th or 6th. They'll usually pay out 5th or 6th place, which is whatever those are usually like $100 or so dollars, like $150 maybe. So I usually finished quite a few times around like 3rd or 4th last year, which was usually maybe about $300 or $400.
Nice. So. That's good. Is there an entry fee to get into these, I'm assuming?
Actually, no. It's generally they're sponsored by a company. So obviously Nathan's is sponsored by Nathan's, that kind of thing. So actually anybody that wants to sign up for one of their contests can go to the website and sign up for any contest that they have listed as upcoming. You don't have to be. We have there's signed people and there's ranked eaters like myself, but the contests are open to anybody. So it's very just like me on my first time, you can just go to the website, sign up, and give it a shot if you think you've got the guts.
Cool. So do the individual athletes or eaters, do they have do you have individual sponsors? Like does Joey Chestnut have some big sponsor backing him, or is he just?
I think with Joey, because with his popularity, I think that they might, and I'm not sure, kind of, he might be on the payroll for them a little bit to come out to some certain events, and they do publicity and stuff like that. And I know he has a mustard brand coming out now.
Does he really?
Something, yeah. But I think for the most part, most of the eaters are. Kind of that aren't really sponsored. I think they kind of come out on their own dime, hoping to win money. They pay for their own travel usually, but do it for the love of the sport, so to speak. There's a lot of people. There's a lot of events every year besides Nathan's, so I think most people go to as many as they want to. Or usually there's a couple that are fairly local for me at least.
So what's your recovery time between events? Like, can you do an event Saturday and then do another one the following Saturday? Like, does your stomach and mind, can you handle that?
Yeah, I definitely recover, for me, a lot faster from the food stuff than I do from the races. But because for me, I think usually a competitive event will be timed and limited to maybe usually about 10 minutes, or never longer than that really, and maybe down to 6 at the least. So in that time frame, it's really about sounds funny, but it's about a technique on how to eat. You see the guys on Nathan's where they're taking the dogs out, eating those separate than the buns and dunking the buns, and there's a method there, and it becomes more of how fast can you eat more than what's the how much can you actually physically fit into you, and so you're not completely full, and the recovery is a little bit easier for me for the competitions than it would be for maybe like say a especially large restaurant challenge, because those can last as long as it takes. They usually give you up to like an hour for the larger ones, and so it's those can be kind of rough.
Interesting. I never thought about it that way.
Mm-hmm.
So what does your training look like like, do you do specific? I think I've seen on some documentaries like guys drinking gallons of water to kind of try to expand their stomach. Do you do anything like that, or what's your method here?
I think the water thing is part of it. Sometimes you got to be careful with that, and obviously it's one of those things that no one would ever recommend for somebody who's not used to it. Or you got to be careful with the water, but sorry. A lot of times though, what I'll try and do is just for the training, it's usually a little bit safer, a better idea, and a little more effective to you actually want to eat food to practice eating. It makes sense to if you're going to practice something, you should do it.
Yeah, sports specificity, that makes sense.
Right. So if it's an event or like a specific food that I want to practice, like hot dogs, then there's really no other way than just to eat hot dogs. Sometimes, for training, just to kind of work on your, capacity-wise, you can, like I said, eat. A lot of people will eat like large quantities of like vegetables, like broccoli, lettuce is a popular one. I know some people like grapes. I'm not a big fan of grapes, but stuff like that. Lower calorie, high density foods is usually a kind of a more sustainable way of training than eating a ton of hot dogs every day or every other day or as often as you can, because you do want to give yourself in training like that some time to recover, kind of clean, let it all work its way through you.
Yeah. So
before you do it again.
So I've done one eating challenge, but it wasn't a quantity thing; it was a spicy thing, and it was some restaurant in New York that had like super hot curry, and I was eating it and I was like visibly sweating, and I had to like shovel a bunch in my mouth and then like swallow and kind of wait a couple of seconds or a minute or something before I ate some more. And the actual eating it wasn't so bad. The next day when it came out of my system was pretty awful. Like, it was bad.
Yeah.
So when you're down, however many hot dogs you eat at Nathan's hot dog, like, is the aftermath bad? Is that a nice way of saying it?
Yeah, I know, and it's. I'm fine talking about it because it is one of those things. When you're dealing with eating a bunch of food, it's got to go somewhere. It does depend on the food. I don't do a lot of spicy stuff. I have in the past, but never in enough quantity where it's really wrecked me. And I like spicy food, so I maybe have I have pretty good tolerance for it. A lot of things like hot dogs. You might be uncomfortable and full that day. But for me, once I maybe take a nap and sleep it off, digest a little bit, and I don't really have, maybe besides maybe a little bit of, bloating the next day, not really any side effects. But the one thing you do want to watch out for, or that bugs that gets to me sometimes is the sugary stuff. One of the contests I did, which was the moon pies, and I don't know if everybody knows moon pies, but they're like basically a s'more turned inside out. It's like a round, soft graham cracker with a sandwich with marshmallow in it, and then the whole thing's covered in chocolate. It's about the size of a small bowl, but you eat a bunch of those. I think I ate like 30 of them in 8 minutes or something like that, and that sugar gets in there and starts fermenting a little bit, and it gives you a rumble in your stomach that just is uncomfortable, and making a lot of gas and stuff like up and down for the rest of the week, or a few days at least.
One of my friends did the Krispy Kreme challenge, which is like a 2-mile run. You eat a dozen Krispy Kreme donuts and 2-mile run back. It's held annually in North Carolina, and he said, obviously the run out was fine. The donuts was rough, but not too bad. He said the run back was pretty bad. He said, but the worst part was he felt like the hangover from that was worse than like drinking because of the sugar, like the sugar high and then the sugar crash.
Right. So. Yeah, they have an event. There's a couple events kind of similar to this, but there's one close by me that another one of the MLE guys does, and he wins every year. It's called the Tour de Donut, where it's basically a 36-mile bike race, and for every donut you eat along the way, they'll knock 5 minutes off your time. So I think he finished with a negative time. He's like an Ironman or like an ultra marathon athlete too. He finished like a negative time, ate like 44 donuts. I think I ate like 33, and I finished in like 12 minutes. For a 36-mile race, that was my time, 12 minutes. So I got second. That was fun. Nothing like riding a bike, full of 30-some donuts. It's a different feeling.
Do you eat them all at the beginning, all at the end, or in the middle, or can I like ride and eat at the same time?
I think what I did on that one, if I remember, is I ate about 2 dozen at the beginning. Pretty much got to right up to the point where I was, any more and I would have been a little uncomfortable because I think they had like 2 stations. So the first station I ate like, about 2 dozen, and then was kind of like okay. And then rode to the next station, and that's where I tried to really kind of push it, and then just kind of, for the rest of the race, it was just like, all right, we just got to focus on, one foot in front of the other here for the rest of this, because it was kind of a little bit miserable, but, it was fun.
So one of the things, obviously, we do for OCR when we're trying to race competitively at our peak potential is taper leading into the race. So what is a food taper / like the week or day before the race kind of look like, or the day before the competitive eating event look like?
Well, I know a lot of guys will go to, go to like a liquid diet almost, a few days leading up to the race, and make sure, your kind of whole body's cleaned out. You don't, have any, you don't want to take like a huge meal in, the night before if you can help it, but. So yeah, it's more of a clean out. I think a couple guys, if it's a later event, they'll maybe do a little bit of like a water, not a lot of water, but a little bit of water, just to kind of keep the stomach from kind of constricting on them, since you don't really have any food in there, throughout the day, and then kind of letting that work its way out until up to the event. So yeah, I mean, I think that'd probably be the closest comparison is just kind of, making sure your stomach's rested more, or your stomach's prepared rather than, your body.
Yeah. Gotcha. Yeah, I've been through a couple of training events for my job where they don't feed me very often, and your stomach definitely does shrink because we would, we'd get out of the training environment after spending, sometimes 2 weeks, sometimes like 2 months doing this stuff. And people would be like, oh, I'm going to eat so much stuff. And then you eat like what would be considered a normal amount. And you're like, I'm so full, I'm going to throw up. Like, because your stomach is just not used to holding all that food.
Yeah. It's funny because like everyone's like, oh, man, your stomach must be huge. And it's like, well, if you look at, these competitive eaters guys, the stomach, when it's empty, it still shrinks down in the normal size of a normal person. You never be able to know. But it's just that ability for the competitive eater guys that when you start putting stuff in it, it can expand a lot more than, the normal person.
Yeah, like Matty Stone, the guy who usually comes in second. I think he's beaten Joey Chestnut at Nathan's Hot Dog.
Yeah,
once maybe. Yep. I mean, the dude has like abs. He's a small Asian guy with abs.
Yeah. And that was another thing I wanted to bring up. It's funny because a lot of people are like, oh man, I get called skinny quite a bit, which always bugs me because I'm definitely not a fat. I don't have a lot of fat on me, but I do lift weights a little bit. I'm always a little bit offended. I'm like, come on, I look like I lift a little bit. Come on, what you call me skinny? And I never do get called skinny except when I'm trying to eat like a 6-pound cheeseburger. So I find it a little bit ironic, but they're always like, oh, it's always the skinny guys, and it's true because. I think, and you'll find that a lot of the upper ranked, really world, best of the competitive eater people are fairly fit. I mean, I know Matt Stoney is, Carmen, who got second place last year. He's a pretty fit guy. There are several professional trainers within the top 50 of competitive eating ranked. I think there's a professional wrestler. There's a couple. Like I said, there's a marathon guy that's does a marathon every month. So I think it'd be surprising to most people how fit most of the competitive eaters that you'll find are.
So why do you think that is? Why do you think these people who are fit are also doing well at competitive eating?
Well, it's one of those things where people, they understand, balance. It all comes down into nutrition. They know how to, what their bodies need, and they know when they can, when they can eat crazy and when they, dial it back, and really have a good, level of, and the people that are healthy and have a pretty into fitness have that mentality of the training, being able to commit to the training that it takes a lot of the times, because a lot of it is uncomfortable. But I mean, just in terms of pure practicality on why I think the thinner people do better is there is if you don't have they've been looked at it before, if you don't have a large amount of belly fat around your midsection, you're actually your stomach's able to expand more than normal, because it's not restricting, you don't have that level of layer of fat restricting it. And then most people would be surprised to say that there's a lot of conditioning, cardio that goes into competitive eating too, because when you're eating so heavy like that, you have to be able to control your breathing as well. So I think Joey's talked about this in the past too, where for a 10-minute competition, if you are just eating and eating and eating, you can get winded fairly easily, just because if you don't have a good way to regulate your breathing and to calm down, and find that rhythm. And that all comes from the same thing that fitness, all the fitness things come from too.
Cool. No, I think that's very interesting. Definitely some good points there. So you personally, let's talk about you personally and going from between OCR and competitive eating. So what lessons do you think you or maybe someone else can take away from competitive eating and apply to OCR?
I think one of the main things I was, when I was thinking about this before was, surprisingly for competitive eating, there's a lot of strategy into it. Some of the events are, it's just shovel it in, but there's always a game plan and some tactics you want to do. And I think even for the restaurant stuff, there's methods on how you want to approach a challenge, and I kind of think of it in the same way that you want to approach an obstacle at the races. I know there's certainly a lot of, or I found in the few races I've done, and let me just say, it's pretty. I'm pretty honored to be here, because I took a scroll through some of the competitors that you've had on here in the past, and they put my obstacle course racing rap sheet to shame. But I'm just a humble guy, trying to do as best he can. But I have noticed, like I said, in the way that you can approach some of these obstacles that you find a lot of these races, is there's harder ways to do it and there's easier ways to do it. One of the things I think about, is like how there's several methods of getting over walls. Walls are one of my favorite obstacles because I'm pretty good at them. I'm 6'5", so it's a little. I have a little bit of an unfair advantage. But some of the the hanging things with with the spinning and all, and the slanted walls with the ropes and the handholds, and you got where to put your feet and stuff like that. And there's if you know a way to do it, or even a spear throw, how do you what's the best way to throw that? You have to kind of go in with the game plan, kind of know what you're doing, not just run right at it, tackle it, and hope for the best. Kind of that, like I have a buddy says, win before you begin. And as funny as it sounds to kind of compare the two, food challenges are the same way. If you, for example, are eating a large burger, which is the most common kind of restaurant challenge you'll find, a lot of people would say eat the meat first, because you don't want to eat that cold, and it's easier to go down. You don't have to drink as much water, and then maybe eat you just come with fries. Eat the fries last. Well, what do you start with? What do you drink? You start with water with the meat, keep it cool down. You don't really need a whole lot. But when when you start getting full, and that flavor gets to you, and you get to the fries or get to the carbs and the bread or whatever, whatever happen may be, switch to soda. Like a diet soda. Ironically, a diet soda. And everyone's like, well, that seems counterintuitive. It's bubbly. It's gonna take up more room. And it's like, well, it helps break down the carbs, in your mouth. When you're trying to, eat a big piece of bread, it's night and day difference to, wash it down with the soda. And then once the soda gets in your stomach, it helps work kind of those air pockets loose, and you can kind of, help shimmy things around and make more room. So, I think, that's probably one of the big things for me, the, lessons or things that I kind of think about that I apply to both, competitive eating, and that is, have a game plan, be prepared, and know kind of what you're up against, what you're going in for, and, how you're going to approach it.
Cool. So can you tell if you can finish a challenge before you do it? Like, do you have any sort of scientific method, or you just kind of look at it and you're like, yeah, I could do that?
Well, not to brag too much, but I think I kind of at this point in my career, most of the restaurant challenges you'll find are a little bit smaller than what are well within my kind of range, I guess I would say. But when I first started, definitely, I could, if they sit in front of you, and that website is pretty good for this, kind of letting you know what the challenge is going to be, and unless they're completely inconsistent with it, you can have a good idea of what you're going up against. But yeah, I think if I can look at something now and say, that's probably within my ability, and I think there's usually a point too where certain way in, you're kind of like, oh, okay, I got this, and you can kind of coast to the finish line, or not, if you need to, but then there have definitely been times, like I said in the past, where I've been to a point where I could keep going, but I know I'm not going to get there, and it's a little too much, and so yeah, you got to kind of know your abilities, definitely, for to where you're at.
Right on. So we talked a lot about kind of the micro, what I would describe as like the micro level of competitive eating and how that relates to OCR. I'd like to kind of pull back a little bit and go more for a macro level. So one of the things that's a hot topic in OCR is a unifying governing body. Mm-hmm. Now, Major League Eating would be the governing body of competitive eating. So right. Assuming you can talk about this, what are some of the positive and negative aspects that have come out of having a governing body over competitive eating? Like, I remember a couple years ago, Kobayashi, the guy who used to always was back and forth with Joey Chestnut,
right?
Stopped showing up to Nathan's, and I don't know all the details, but I think it was something having to do with him wanting to compete outside of Major League Eating or something like that.
Right. So for the contests, Major League Eating does have a kind of a you're assigned competitor. You're one of their guys, and you kind of sign on with them to be able to do their contest. Like I said, most people, if you kind of are coming in right off the street, you can just join a contest, join online. But if they know you and they know you're a contender, or so to speak, they'll have you have you come in and sign on with them. And when you do that, it gives you kind of a priority invitation to the events. You get first serve, I should say, on what you want to when you sign up for things. But they don't want you to kind of do other heads up competitions. So there's kind of a split between the eaters. The kind of the best competitive eaters in the country are either signed up with MLE or kind of part of this kind of loosely based independent league called All Pro Eaters, and they don't really have as many kind of main events. like MLE does. So MLE throws its own events. The all pro people are kind of are independent, so they can go around and do kind of whatever contest happens to be, like a bar or like a county fair or something like that. And I think there's a place for everybody in one of those two realms. I have friends in MLE and I have friends in the all pro guys. I don't think anybody really holds, there's no big beef between the two. It depends on kind of what your goals are for the contests. For me personally, like I was saying, I mentioned maybe before we started, with my schedule, I work a lot. I have other hobbies, martial arts, the OCR stuff. I don't have every weekend to commit to going on to contests. Personally, for me, I like to do 5 or 6 a year, and if I'm going to do 5 or 6 a year, I would like them to be awesome, like huge contests. So that's the thing with MLE. All their events are widely advertised, publicized. Nathan's obviously is the main one, but there's usually quite a large crowd at any event that I've been to so far. So these contests are you go, there's maybe a couple hundred, almost more than 1,000 people in the crowd, and that's awesome having them watch that. But so it's a trade-off. For me, I do fewer but bigger events with MLE than some of my friends who do smaller events where they're the big fish in the little pond, and they go around, do 2 or 3 a weekend, just bouncing around and end up, cleaning up and making a decent amount of money, but with a lot of travel and a lot of time. So either one's pretty good. And the one thing I will say about MLE too, I do like they have a pretty good commitment to safety. There's been some stuff in the news. I think last year in particular, there was a couple eating contests where people choked to death and died. Unfortunately died. And but one thing with MLE is they do always have paramedics on standby. In case somebody does, choke, because it's a very real possibility. And a lot of time, and they also have kind of make sure the foods are, on the safer side. You're never going to have a hard shell taco eating contest in an MLE event. That's something that can kind of hurt you or do some damage. So sometimes some of these independent, random restaurants and stuff, they'll do something that may be a little bit ill-advised, and they won't really be prepared for what happens if somebody starts choking in the middle of the contest, kind of thing. So there's pros and cons, but I think generally it's mostly everyone is pretty positive with everyone else. So.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, it doesn't sound that much unlike OCR.
Yeah.
So I think kind of interesting there. How do you get signed with? So anyone can sign up for the MLE website, like you originally said.
Right.
How did you end up getting signed to their? I guess would be like for us would be like the equivalent of like their pro team or whatever. Did you reach out to them or did they reach out to you?
So when I signed up for the qualifier, which was my first event with them ever, I was an unknown, so I just signed up. I showed up to the contest and I got to compete. I wasn't a contract person or anything, and but because I won, for Nathan's in particular, to get the trip to New York, because if you win a qualifier, they'll fly you and a guest out to New York for a couple days, put you up in a hotel. You'll have you can go to all the press stuff for Nathan's and obviously be on the show. So they if you win a qualifier, they'll have you they'll kind of insist that you sign up for that if if you want to participate when on 4th of July. Other people that I'm friends with that have kind of come on outside of Nathan's, like I said, they signed up for a contest kind of on their own as an unknown, and did if they do fairly well, and want to do another one, they'll kind of, I guess you'll kind of end up on their radar, so to speak, where like, oh, we know this person, they're good, they could, they're going to probably finish in the money, so we want them to kind of come on board, and so they'll ask you to sign up if you want to do any more at that point. As for the rankings, those are kind of hit all over the place. Not really all over the place. It's kind of a mystery onto when and why they're updated. I think when I first started, I was like 22, and then they updated after Nathan's, and to make me 21. Hopefully this year I'll go up, but I think a lot of the ranking is based on Nathan's in particular, just because, and I think it's just because it is an event that so many people, so many of the ranked eaters participate in. It's pretty clear. This person ate this many, this person ate this many, and you can kind of list people in that order. So a lot of the rankings are just based on hot dog numbers. So obviously, like Joey's number one because he eats like 72, and then it kind of goes from there. Just some of the top 5 guys, they kind of look at others. They look at other stuff because those guys do show up to almost every other event. A lot of other events too, so they can kind of use more things to gauge their ranking by. But for me, they gave me that ranking after the qualifier, pretty quickly after the qualifier actually, just because based on hot dog numbers at that point, because that was all I had done so far really.
Yeah, it presents a great challenge when you're trying to rank people, and there's so many different types of food and essentially distances, time periods for each competitive eating event.
Right.
Not unlike OCR. In the past, OCR has tried to do a ranking. So the OCR World Championships that had a ranking in 2015, and they kind of run into the same problem. They had guys showing up to the big events and where the competition's real high, but at the same time, you could get just as many points for doing well in like a local maybe not a local event, but like a smaller event that's still a World Championship qualifier. So I ended up doing a bunch of some of the smaller races in the Midwest, and I ended up getting ranked 9th, like according to the OCR World Championships website, which is not. I would say it's not representative for short distance OCR. I do well at very long stuff, but for like the shorter stuff, I mean, if I showed up to a NBC Spartan race, I would just get blown out of the water. When I have before, I showed up to one in Palmerton, but it creates a challenge. I know the American Obstacle Course Racing Association is attempting to do another ranking. I haven't looked into it that much, although we did have Adrian Bihanata, the owner of OCR World Championships, on this podcast a couple episodes ago. So if anyone wants to hear more about AOCRA, you can go back and listen to that. With Nathan's, so I would consider Nathan's like the Super Bowl or the OCR World Championships of competitive eating. Is that accurate?
Yeah, I mean that is definitely the largest event for the MLE people. And like I said, there's a couple other fairly large competitive eating events in the country that don't quite get as much publicity outside of MLE. I'll go ahead and plug I know Philadelphia has their Wing Bowl every year. That's a fairly large event for the city. They've been doing that for 20-some years now. I think it's like the weekend before the actual Super Bowl. So a lot of people go compete in that. And they, there's other. I think that's the main one that comes to mind. That's quite as big, or it's fairly large, but definitely not anywhere in the realm of the spectacle that is Nathan's. It's something else.
Yeah, so I went to Nathan's hot dog eating contest as a spectator, not as a participant, clearly. I want to say it was 2014. It was the year Joey Chestnut broke the record, and he got 69, which he has since then broken again. I can't remember exactly what. Do you remember the year?
Well, I'm trying to think. I know Stoney beat him in 2015, I believe, and then I can't remember what he got in 2016. That was his comeback. But yeah, it was either 16 or 14 would have been when he won some. Yeah, he would have won those years.
Yeah. So we went to that. It was cool. It was cool to see live. I was actually standing on a parking meter so I could see, which was kind of an impressive balancing act. I was like wedged my foot between. It was like one of those double parking meters, and I like wedged my foot in between one, and then had like one leg propped up. But that was pretty cool to see live. So let's talk a little bit about the future for you personally, and then also the future for competitive eating. So what are your future plans for competitive eating? Are you going to try to make it back to Nathan's this year?
Yeah, I'm actually. It's funny you ask because the qualifiers have all been announced. I'm gonna be at the one May 18th, which is in Cincinnati, which is after the Reds game again. I've been training for that a little bit. I actually as soon as I get off the call with you here, I'm gonna go do some practice, eat some hot dogs. So that'll be fun. But yeah, I'm gonna try and do. I don't know what other contests. I think. I have signed up for one other contest so far with them this year, which is a mutton sandwich eating contest, which is in Kentucky. I think it's the week before the qualifier. But I'm gonna try and probably do about 5 or 6 contests that are close. For me, a lot of it's just seeing the people. Made a lot of good friends last year. A lot of very interesting people that do this kind of thing. It's been very welcoming. That's one of the comparisons I make about the OCR and the competitive eating is that the people that do it are all very supportive of one another. I know OCR is probably one of the most ways most I've ever seen that. Maybe not. I don't know about the elite events that you guys do if you are helping each other, but a lot of the open events where everyone's helping each other over obstacles and stuff like that. I think it's really great. And like I said, with competitive eating too, it's they're all big. It's all a big family. Everyone knows each other, and that goes the big names, the rank guys that go to these events. But yeah, I'm gonna keep trying to do that. If I travel a little bit more, I'll probably keep doing a couple restaurant ones, just for fun. It's always fun to try new foods and new places. It's but yeah, I'm just gonna keep at it. In the meantime, hoping to improve. I want to better my hot dog numbers, I guess, as it were, and try and kind of raise my ranking maybe a little bit. But that's gonna be a tough road. There's a lot of good guys up there and girls. But and then the races is kind of the same thing. I think every year I've been doing it. I do a couple more every year. Like I said, last year was first year I did the Spartan trifecta, which I was pretty pleased with myself for that. But a lot of the races I do are kind of showing. I invite people that I know and friends of mine and coworkers and stuff like that to race with me. Me and my wife, we race together almost every time, and we invite our friends and stuff to do them to kind of show them. It's not as intimidating as I think a lot of people imagine it to be, and because of the inclusiveness of it and stuff like that. So we're gonna keep doing that. I think I'm gonna try and do a trifecta again this year. I've got 2 or 3 other races signed up for so far this year as well that I'm going to do. So at least 6. I mean, I know that probably doesn't sound a lot to some of your listeners, I guess, but when I'm doing a bunch of trying to find the weekends for that and trying to find weekends for the contest and balance and all this stuff, and that's what it is. It's just a balance. I tell people like well, how do you eat like that? And I'm like, well, I just ran up a mountain. I went and did the Colorado Spartan in Denver last year, which was I think I did the super, and immediately after that I went and ate a 5.5 pound cheesesteak. But I felt like I earned it at that point. Right? So it's that yin and yang. That's why I like having both hobbies, because I kind of feel like, they balance each other out a little bit. And so I'm going to keep doing both of them for the foreseeable future.
Well, that's awesome. I love it. And I'm definitely going to be cheering for you now that I know someone on Nathan's hot dog eating competition.
Yeah. I think if you look for it probably hard enough on the 18th of May, you can probably find a live stream somewhere. So hopefully I'll be the favorite for that qualifier, but I'm not counting out anyone else, just random, any up and comers like myself showing up and putting it to me. So I'm going to come ready, and so I want to see it. So
cool. Well, if you find the link before me, feel free to send it over to me, and I will share it to the main Strength and Speed Facebook page.
All right.
And as far as the future of Major League Eating, what are your, like OCR is always talking about, like, pushing for the Olympics. Is there any sort of big push in Major League Eating, or have people kind of settled into this is where we fit in the, the wide world of sports, and, we're happy with our one, big televised event a year, and then everything else is kind of local and live streamed?
Yeah, I mean, I would imagine they would like, and I don't know for sure, I can speak about it too much, but I would imagine, they're trying to, get a couple more major events on the docket, because it's, it brings more recognition, kind of to the sport. But I think right now they are pretty much the top dogs too. So it's so I don't know how much they want to mess with that or what's the new plan. But whatever they end up doing, I'll be ready for it, because I'm like I said, it's exciting.
All right, sounds great. Before I let you go, any shout-outs or people you want to thank, or companies, etc.?
No sponsors yet, but that'd be fun. But I'll thank my wife, because she kind of got me into the races, or saying she'd do it with me. So, and we do them all together. So since this is a OCR themed podcast, I'll thank her for letting me throw over the walls all the time.
All right, sounds good. I'm gonna have to think of some good competitive eating sponsors, and then I'll try to hook you up and use some connections maybe, and
right on
get some things going here. For those of you listening to the podcast, make sure you head over to the Strength and Speed store. Just released my latest book, Mud Run Guide's ultra-ocr Bible. So it's for races focused on 8 to 24 hours or multi-day type events. So that's available for pre-order now. The books actually will end up in my hands and shipped to you on April 19th. So if anyone wants a copy, head over, order soon. Because I'm only planning on doing one run of them. So I'm not sure how many I'll have left, but make sure you place that order. Also, running out of leg mitts. So I think for small and large, I'm down to like a couple of pairs. So if you're a small or large leg mitt and you're going to buy them for Toughest Mudder, please do so ASAP. Now, we still have a couple medium left. I think about 9 medium as of this recording, which is on 30 March. I think that about wraps it up. Derek, thanks again for coming on the podcast.
Yeah,
I thought that was super interesting because you watch these guys on TV and you're just like, what? Yeah, it's just mind-numbing seeing someone shovel, 10 hot dogs into their mouth, let alone 20, 30, 40, 50, etc.
Yeah.
So I thought it was very interesting to get some of the behind the scenes, because a lot of times on those shows they really just kind of touch on it, and it's kind of like the Spartan show. It's mostly like hype, and it's like overly dramatized, where it's like these dudes are doing this
to make
for
the rivalry happen.
Yeah. So again, thanks for coming on. I thought it was super interesting. I hope everyone else enjoyed it as much as I did, and crush it this year at your Nathan's qualifier, and then the big one. Yeah. We're rooting for you. You got a whole OCR industry cheering you on.
Sweet.
And we'll talk to you later.
All right, thank you.